recording is complete. Okay, Nama Om Vishnu Pathaya Krishna Vastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swanti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Kauravani Pachaline Nivasisha Sunyavahari Prishtatara Satarine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. So let me give you access to Bhagavad Gita if you don't have it with you, and there you can see it. There it is, Hare Krishna, Bhagavad Gita as it is. Okay, Novasacho, you have your hand up there, so I guess that's an enthusiastic hand to read. You can go ahead, text 26.
Thank
Okay,
you.
I forgot anything? No, we're ready. Let's go. Hare Krishna.
Text 26.
Yes.
Kamakrodha vimuktanam yatinam yatachetasam abhito brahma nirvanam vartate viditatmanam. Those who are free from anger and all material desires, who are self-realized, self-disciplined, and constantly endeavoring for perfection, are assured of liberation in the Supreme in the very near future. Purport. Of the saintly persons who are constantly engaged in striving towards salvation, one who is in Krishna consciousness is the best of all. The Bhagavatam 4:22-39 confirms this fact as follows. Just try to worship in devotional service, Vasudev, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even great sages are not able to control the forces of the senses as effectively as those who are engaged in transcendental bliss by serving the lotus feet of the Lord, uprooting the deep-grown desire for fruitive activities. In the conditioned soul, the desire to enjoy the fruitive results of work is so deep-rooted that it is very difficult even for the great sages to control such desires, despite great endeavors. A devotee of the Lord, constantly engaged in devotional service in Krishna consciousness, perfect in self-realization, very quickly attains liberation in the Supreme. Owing to his complete knowledge in self-realization, he always remains in trance. To cite an analogous example of this, by vision, by meditation, and by touch, only do the fish, the tortoise, and the birds maintain their offsprings. Similarly, do I also, O Padmaja. The fish brings up its offspring simply by looking at them. The tortoise brings up its offspring simply by meditation. The eggs of the tortoise are laid on land, and the tortoise meditates on the eggs while in the water. Similarly, the devotee in Krishna consciousness, although far away from the Lord's abode, can elevate himself to the abode simply by thinking of him constantly, by engagement in Krishna consciousness. He does not feel the pangs of material miseries. This state of life is called Brahma Nirvana, or the absence of material miseries due to being constantly immersed in the Supreme.
Sorry, Hare Krishna, didn't change page here. Hare Krishna. Okay, so here we are. This is text 26. Any immediate questions or comments that come from this? One second. Someone's coming in here. Yeah. Now, it's interesting because that's why I'm going back to the Sanskrit. You see this word yatinam, and it's translated as here as of the saintly persons. Now, the word yati is also used in the Mahabharata, and I was interested to see of describing saintly persons. I was interested to see that I have 4 commentaries by the Sampradaya Acharyas, Ramanuja Acharya, Shrita Swami, Madhavacharya, and Keshava Kashmiri. And in their purports or explanations to this verse, they are explaining that actually yatinam is referring to those who are starkly renounced, those who have no connection, those who are celibate, those who have no connection to society or family, children, etc. So the mendicants, the sannyasis. So for them, they quickly achieve the supreme. They assure the liberation in the supreme in the very near future. All right. So what about us? What about you? What about us? You know. So it's interesting. Prabhupada's purport. He mentions about he correlates saintly persons to those who are devotees of Krishna, and he doesn't make a distinction in the purport. A sannyasi devotee of Krishna, a grihastha devotee of Krishna, etc. With children or without children. Prabhupada focusing on the position of a devotee. So one may be, so if one is a devotee of Krishna, they are, and there are subduing their senses. There's another commentary that says that by subduing one's senses, like we read last time, free from anger, then the super soul, Paramatma or Krishna, serves such persons and makes the path very quickly attained by bringing our senses under control, by following Krishna's direction. Krishna then gives us inspiration. So the point I'm making here is that Prabhupada wonderfully brings up about the superior position of a devotee. So if one's a devotee of Krishna, they may have a full-time or they may have a part-time job and 3 children, but they're better situated than the word again, than the yatinam, than the yati, someone who's starkly renounced and doesn't even live in a home. So I found that quite interesting. Prabhupada's purport doesn't mention it at all. He just mentions about the devotees of the Lord. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. Yeah. Any questions or comments on that? This is encouraging, and it mentions in the another commentary by Burijam. It's mentioned that this Krishna is encouraging us here, that this is what will happen if you endeavor to follow my direction and you endeavor to control the self, especially from anger, karma, and krodha. Ensure the liberation in the very near future. Sounds encouraging. Everyone feels encouraged. Yes. Krishna is always encouraging.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. There's also, I read as well, I was quoting it recently, that in the purport by one purport, Srila Prabhupada explains that Krishna is never inattentive when it comes to our deliverance from material existence. He's always scheming and thinking how to get this jiva back. 24 hours a day. Yeah. So other points on this verse for your interest. This verse finishes Krishna's discussion on how to obtain liberation through knowledge of the super soul. Yeah. Through knowledge of the supreme within. You follow? Because the next verse speaks about obtaining, it gives a little summary of attaining liberation through Astanga yoga. And that Astanga yoga is then spoken of in a kind of elaborate way in chapter 6. This verse completes Krishna's path that is given to the Nishkam Karma yogi of developing knowledge as a means to achieve liberation. And it finishes that section. Now he gives a little summary, the next verse, about the process of Astanga. And then that's spoke of in chapter 6. Then it's very important finishing verse to chapter 6 as well. Also this chapter. Well, Yeah. Anything else from here? I'm just looking. Saw. I managed to find something else which was quite interesting as well. The psychology of giving up the object of the senses. This is mentioned by Baladeva Vichabhushana. So by giving up the memories of those sensations, the mind withdraws from the sense objects. Okay? So that's part of the psychology. There is a psychology aspect to Krishna consciousness. That the memories of past kind of, if you want, sensual or past material activities may come from the subtle body and pervade the mind. But we have to endeavor not to, not to dwell, not to elaborate within the mind. We have to bring it where we have to give that up. Then the mind withdraws from the sense objects. Yeah. Because by meditating upon the sense objects, then you invite them in a subtle way into your subtle body. You follow? So it's an imprint. It leaves an imprint in your mind. And so you feel the next time you come in contact with those sense objects, you feel an immediate attraction because it's already in your mind. It feels so familiar. It is subtle. It's just like if you, if you like to eat a cheesecake and you really like it, then the next day you're going to have an extra desire. Next time you see a cheesecake, you're going to have less of a will to say no because you've already ascertained it to be pleasing to your senses. So it's going to be more difficult to control yourself. That's an innocent example I'm giving. You can extrapolate that as you wish, you know. So, and that's going to be described more. This Ashtanga it will be described in the next chapter. But then Prabhupada in his purports, he keeps us in tune with bhakti, because one can get confused that Krishna's asking us to do Ashtanga, which means to be yogis, controlling the life airs, breathing in, breathing out, sitting on a deer skin, living in the Himalayas. But Prabhupada keeps us on track in his purports. There's no need for bhaktas, for those who are following the process of bhakti, to engage in these things. All right. Any comments or questions on that? And I shall keep going on then. This verse here, which I'm highlighting, this is coming from Baladeva Vijayabhushana. Prabhupada's quoting it from his commentary. So, in other words, where was how is it possible that something difficult to obtain will be achieved in the very near future? So then Prabhupada quotes this. So how is it possible that something difficult can be obtained in the near future? So then he gives this example. By vision, by meditation, and by touch, only do the fish, the tortoise, and birds maintain their offspring. It's an interesting example. Similarly, so do I also, Padmaja. So by vision, anyone heard that before, that the fish, just by looking at their eggs, maintains the offspring? Meditation, the tortoise meditates on the eggs, the birds, the touch, it brings the birds hatch. Anyway, so similarly do I also, Padma. And yeah, Prabhupada looks, then Prabhupada gives more elaboration here. Yeah. Similarly, the devotees of Krishna, devotees in Krishna consciousness, although far away, nice, isn't it? Prabhupada really, although far away from the Lord's abode, can elevate himself to that abode simply by thinking of Krishna constantly, by engaging in Krishna consciousness. Yeah? So if the fish and the tortoise and the birds can do, so can Krishna. So the spiritual realm is far away. Yeah? He does not feel the pangs of material miseries. This state of life is called Brahma Nirvana. Anyone feel the pangs of material miseries?
No.
No.
It's really nice. It's really nice material world.
Yeah, Brahma Nirvana, absence of material miseries. And it's not a cheap thing, is it? I'm sure many of us were practicing devotion and service for some time, and that's not a cheap thing to be free of material miseries, which comes from the bodily concept of life, basically.
I have a question when you...
Yes, go ahead when I stop rabbiting. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. It's carry on. I was thinking, like me, when I first joined, to give up Indian tea was really, really difficult because it boils like this, nice, sugary, really nice and dark, whatever. But that subtle flavor is still there. When I go to my mother's and she has her own like that tea, you can still smell it. You know, you don't drink it, you don't, want it. You have your own things. But when Prabhupada is saying that it will go, soon will go, I'm just thinking, that's just one example. But I'm just saying, it can be quite difficult to get this subtle desires out.
Oh, yes. So let's just, do you remember the verse we read yesterday? Then we brought up the question. I mean, how long does one have to tolerate the urges of the senses, specifically lust or anger? And what's the answer?
Until death.
Yeah, until death.
Yes.
So as long as we got this body.
Okay, got the answer. You have to keep fighting it.
Well, you don't fight, you just tolerate. That's the idea. You may experience the memory and sensation of previous activities, but you just tolerate it, and it will come and it will go.
Is it
otherwise, yeah, one second. Otherwise, if we go there, it will, for instance, if you, for instance, had a moment of weakness and you drank, God forbid, some Indian tea. Oh my God. Then that would create a certain, that would enter into your mind and subtle body, and it would make it more difficult to say no next time. It would make you weaker. Yeah. So the next time in that situation and faced with that, it'd be more difficult to say no. Now, these are innocent examples. So that's why we have to tolerate the pushings of the senses. And we're going to have to, as you mentioned, but there are stages. There are, for instance, you mentioned how long. There are stages of bhakti, specifically when one's developing one's intuitive realization of a specific relationship with Krishna. Then one is no longer identifying with their material body, but is more identifying with their burgeoning, growing spiritual body. So therefore, that's the stage of bhava, where the knot to material existence is actually cut. Yep, when the ray of prema touches the soul, and one has an intuitive understanding of their relationship with Krishna, and then they cultivate that. So therefore, they do not identify with their body or anything that goes with the body, like the subtle material body. So these stages, at latter stages, then these things are not a obstacle. But even at the stage of nishta, being fixed in devotional service, they should not be an obstacle. Yeah. You may experience them, you may feel them, but you disregard them. And you continue with your Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu. You know? And if you do that, you will feel a sense of peace that will come. Because Krishna will be pleased with you. Krishna will be pleased with that surrender that you just did. Yes, sorry, Nitai Mata, you started.
Actually, Prabhu, I have a problem too sometimes. Because sometimes, even when I'm having paneer, and sometimes I remember, all of a sudden, I remember some, I'm not a fan of meat, but still, I remember. I go, oh, Krishna Chaitanya, why am I remembering this rubbish? Like that. I don't know what to do. I feel like it's not all the time. So I think maybe I didn't chant very well. That's why this is happening, and I get really worried. Very seldom.
Yeah, but what should you do? Nothing.
So no, when I'm having paneer.
No, you just when you're having. Oh, go on, carry on.
When I'm having paneer, I may remember some like chicken or something. I don't know why. Crazy it is. And
we know why.
I got really upset that.
Well, it's quite obvious why, because you was eating those things before. I mean, there's no mystery.
But Prabhu, it's not all the time. Very seldomly it happens that I think maybe.
So that is good. That means there's some distance has been created from the past impressions that the past. But occasionally it's going to come up. There's another verse, I think again in the Mahabharata, describes that everything is stored within the mind. Every emotion, every picture, every thought, everything is it's stored within the depths of the subtle body. And just like if you're ever sitting on the edge of a lake, even if it's peaceful and there's no wind, if you sit there, then you'll see bubbles come up. Yeah. From the oxygen that comes. So it's the same. Especially when you become more regulated and we follow specific principles, then we notice these things come up more because we're relatively peaceful. So therefore we can notice when things unfavorable within our mind come to our mind. But what it says is just to, as they say, heard that saying, let the dogs may bark, but the caravan passes.
Yeah, we say the moon will shine. Dogs will bark.
So we just have to, and we can tolerate it, or we can easily pass these little tests and these little trials and tribulations, especially if we're regularly chanting the holy name and like that. And sometimes one may succumb, but that's not the end as well. That's not the end.
Yeah, but it's very frustrating that moment. You don't want to eat. You feel like pukish, piggish. I don't know what all feelings comes, and it's very difficult. It has happened to me about 2-3 times. I went nuts.
Anyway, don't be surprised. Don't be surprised what comes up within our mind, and because we're the ones who put it there. We're the ones who put all this stuff in our mind and senses. So don't be shocked. Don't be surprised. It will come up.
Yeah, the best thing is to step back and overview your thought process. Where is it coming from? Why is it coming back? You have to step back to see the bigger picture.
Yeah, very good, Mahasatra. And that's what we're doing now. There's like reading and studying this Bhagavad Gita that gives us an objective viewpoint of what's going on. So we don't freak out. But definitely we should be. It's good if we're at the stage of we're fixed. We're at stage of nishta, where these things are not gonna drag us. Dhananjay,
Hare Krishna.
yes, go ahead, Dhananjay.
Yeah. This discussion reminds me of a verse in chapter 2, which is very, very famous. Matra sparshastu kaunteya
Shitoshna.
shitoshna sukha dukkhada. Yeah. So rather than struggling, why it is coming, it should not come, and struggling with those thoughts. Accept and try to tolerate it.
Yeah. There Krishna's speaking about happiness and distress that comes. Distressful situations will come our way, and also there will be materially good things will come our way. So and we have to tolerate like winter and summer. Yeah, thank you for pointing out that verse. It mentions there about specifically. That's the main verse which Bodhi's quote in regards to being tolerant.
Prabhu, actually, why I'm
rather than struggling and thinking,
let Dhananjay finish. Yeah.
Sorry.
Anything else, Dhananjay?
Yeah. Sorry. Just wanted to reiterate on the same point. Rather than thinking, why this is happening, this should not happen, this is not expected out of me, it should go away, and rather than that, just observe what thoughts are coming up and try to tolerate it and move on.
That's it. And we can do this if we have a strong spiritual foundation. If we're chanting 16 rounds a day and where our life is protected in the fence of the regulative principles, then these things, and no need to worry about them. Right. Anybody else has any other questions or comments on this? Interesting.
I just want
in one verse. It's Prabhu again.
Prabhu, why I'm asking, I actually, until because Mother Chandravali mentioned, then I remembered this. Otherwise, I have never thought of this. I just remembered because Mother Chandravali mentioned it. So I was thinking, and I was not even a fan. It's not that a person I cannot eat without meat like that. I ate meat maybe 2 days a week like that. So I think, maybe I have not done my proper chanting. I have not done introspection. I think like that. And I of course, I'm not thinking why it is happening. I want to say I don't want this to come. I want to just move forward. That's what I'm always doing.
Yeah. But that's good. Perhaps it's Krishna putting it there because he wants to fuel that type of determination. So bring these things in your mind so you can chant, you can assess your better. That may be happening as well. As I said, Krishna is very attentive to our deliverance. So he's got all different ways and means. He's going to get us to become desperate.
What have you done, Mother Chandravali, now?
Go on. Sorry?
No, I'm just making a joke. Nothing.
Yeah, but how many times are you saying that how these things come up? Is this you go? Why are these things coming up in your mind? But it's the same thing, when we see somebody doing something or anything like that, we think, oh, why is she doing? Why he's doing? Why can't I do it? And then you pray, Krishna, I don't want thoughts like that in my head. So it's like, so that's part of getting purification, isn't it? Trying to go forward, in your spiritual life. So all these things are going to be there for us to be fixed in our sadhana to be able to get rid of these things,
And that is the dynamic of spiritual life. Even persons who take up, for instance, those who become Muslims, those who become Christians or whatever, Jews, whatever, yogis, they're all on this path of denying their material desires and trying to achieve God. And that's spiritual life. I mean, that's the challenge we take, and we should Make it like spiritual warriors, you know. Yes. And the next verse describes how yogis do it, how they're like a method of astanga, or becoming. Then the next chapter will describe it of strictly controlling the ingoing breath, the outgoing breath, etc. They're all, these yogis are doing it for the same. They're all doing it because they want to be free from material attachment, and they do it through these different disciplines, yogic disciplines. And that will, and the next two verses will will just introduce that. But then the last verse is very significant. We might not get there today because those who came a little bit late, we're going to have to finish at 1:45 today because I have another Zoom I have to take part in. But the last verse in this chapter describes, basically, it's by Bhakti. But let's not give it all away right now. Let's read the next verse, shall we? Unless there's any other questions or comments on this. It's amazing what can come up just in one verse, isn't it? When we churn it. Let's go. We ain't got a few minutes. We've got a few minutes left, so let's read this quickly. It's quite a long purple. Quick, someone read.
You can read it a bit quicker.
Shutting out all the external sense objects. Keeping, again, this is an introduction to what's described in the 6th chapter. This is Krishna attracting the Astanga yogis to listen to his message. So therefore, he's describing that. Yeah. So if any Astanga yogis out there, it's going to help us sit up. Shutting out all the external sense objects, keeping the eyes and vision concentrated between the two eyebrows, suspending the inward and outward breaths within the nostrils, and thus controlling the mind, senses, and intelligence. The transcendentalist, aiming at liberation, becomes free from desire, fear, and anger. One who is always in this state is certainly liberated. So let's see what Prabhupada says, because he's obviously not speaking to the general bhaktas, to the devotees. This description, let's see. Being engaged in Krishna consciousness, one can immediately understand one's spiritual identity, and then one can understand the Supreme Lord by means of devotional service. So here you go. Here's Prabhupada's Bhakti purports. The verse doesn't mention about, and I can give a whole thing about, the verse doesn't mention about Bhakti here. So again, Prabhupada's keeping us our sights on Krishna's ultimate instruction. Because here, the first sentence, he says, by engaging in Krishna consciousness, one can immediately understand one's spiritual identity, and then one can understand the Supreme Lord by means of devotional service. He doesn't. Anyway, I'll read it, getting excited here. When one is well situated in devotional service, one comes to the transcendental position, qualified to feel the presence of the Lord in the sphere of one's activities. This particular position is called liberation in the Supreme. Okay. After explaining the above principles of liberation in the Supreme, the Lord gives instructions to Arjuna as to how one can come to that position by practice of mysticism or yoga known as Astanga, which is divisible into 8-fold procedure: yama, niyama, asana, pranayam, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. In the 6th chapter, the subject of yoga is explicitly detailed, and at the end of the 5th, it is only preliminarily explained. One has to drive out the sense objects such as sound, touch, form, taste, and smell by the pratyahara process of yoga, and then keep the vision of the eyes between the two eyebrows, and concentrate on the tip of the nose with half-closed lids. There is no benefit in closing the eyes altogether, because there is every chance of falling asleep, nor is there benefit in opening the eyes completely, because one may see the ice cream man and go to buy an ice cream. Because then there is the hazard of being attracted by sense objects. The breathing movement is restrained within the nostrils by neutralizing the up-moving and down-moving air within the body. By practice of such yoga, one is able to gain control over the senses, refrain from outward sense objects, and thus prepare oneself for liberation in the Supreme. So Prabhupada's gone back to the yogic path. So that's what he says in last paragraph. This yoga process helps one become free from all kinds of fear and anger, and thus feel the presence of the supersoul in the transcendental situation. Then he says, in other words, Krishna consciousness is the easiest process for executing yogic principles. So the easiest process for practicing what he just said in the last paragraph is Krishna consciousness. This will be thoroughly explained in this next chapter. And he says, a Krishna conscious person, however, being always engaged in devotional service, does not risk losing his senses to some other engagement. This is a better way of controlling the senses than by Astanga yoga. Okay. I did a little study on this, one book I have, which gives a critical, it criticizes the critics of the Bhagavad Gita as it is. And they will complain of Prabhupada's giving a bhakti, mentioning bhakti here in this verse. Yeah, Prabhupada is bringing it out. I think I said before that they say something along the lines here, Sri Krishna doesn't at all mention devotion or bhakti. Actually, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada seems to see bhakti everywhere in the Bhagavad Gita, even in verses where it is not mentioned. That's called Bhagavad Gita as it is. You know, Prabhupada's keeping us on track, you know. That's why I can understand so many people obviously easily confused by Bhagavad Gita. Anyway, any questions or comments on this?
I was thinking on that, like Prabhupada is so fixed in devotional service. I mean, that's it. That's the most important thing. So everything he can see in that way, anything that comes up, any verse, any paragraph he sees. Say, like I connected to, like, say some people like chanting. This reading, chanting, hearing, but some people like chanting. So when you kind of preach, you always go to what you really, chanting so important, or chant around. You'll bring that up because that's where your main thoughts are on.
Yes.
With Prabhupada's devotional service, completely everything is connected to his thoughts, which is just perform devotional service.
Yeah. But it has the but Prabhupada as the Acharya, completely in tune with the modern mind.
Yes.
Is presenting Bhagavad Gita to making it accessible. He's presenting a process of bhakti. Because as an Acharya, without his purpose, no one will take up bhakti. But Prabhupada again, he's changing in one sense to direct explanation of Krishna in one sense, but actually he's not. He's actually getting to the real essence of what Krishna is communicating to Arjuna ultimately, which is 1866. Sarvadhamam pariyajatya. Yeah, you said, after having explained all this, Astanga, Karma, everything, actually, you just need to engage in bhakti, in Shawana bhakti. Yeah, and I will take care of everything. Yeah, this is.
Because later on in Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna asked, isn't it, to Krishna, okay, so who is important? The one who meditates on your personal form or impersonal?
Yeah, that's in the 12th chapter. In the beginning of the 12th chapter.
Yeah, and then Krishna says, okay, you can do impersonal, like you can go all like beat around the bushes. Okay, that's okay. You'll come to me, but it'll be a long process and a difficult process.
Yeah.
But by performing devotional service, which is straightforward, you'll come to me.
Yeah, and that reminds me of, I think we might not get there today, but the last verse of this chapter, Bhakta Yam Yagatapa Sam. This is an easier way, to do one's duties with the understanding that Krishna is our friend, he's our well-wisher, and that's bhakti. I'm just checking. All right. So unless there's any questions or comments, anything further here in a couple of minutes, because I've got to sign out here. A bit shorter.
It's okay. Sorry, joined a bit late. I get carried away with other things
No
sometimes.
problem. So it's quite, I want you, great. So next Tuesday we can spend a bit of time on this verse here. Param Yagnatapasam Sarvalokamaheshwaram Suradim Sarvabhutanam Kanatvam Mam Santim Vichiti. So this verse is bhakti everywhere.
Yeah.
Devotion. And Prabhupada quoted this verse so many times. Prabhupada had quite a profound realization of this verse. This was his life's mission, actually, preaching these principles to bring about world peace. You know, Prabhupada will mention it again and again and again. Very important. You know. Okay, I better sign off here. I've got to sign off and sign in somewhere else. So thank you for kind attention. Hare Krishna. Amazing, just on these 2 verses.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you.
Thank
Hare
you.
Krishna.
Krishna. Hare
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Juju. Hare Bol.
Premanande, Hari Bo, Hare Krishna.